All right, and joining me today is Ivana Petrović, who fights Luana Carolina at UFC Vegas 76. That fight is on July 1st. So, first of all, Ivana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. So, the first thing I obviously want to ask, you get the call straight to the UFC. A lot of people going through the Ultimate Fighter these days or Contender Series or things like that. You get the call straight to the UFC. What was the reaction like when your manager calls to tell you, hey, they want you on the big show right away?
To be honest, it felt like a dream in the start, but after some time, I got a fight, and I said, okay, now I need to start to train, and to be more serious.
that,
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you said you had to get to training. We're going to talk for that fight in a second, but I want to talk about the lead up to getting this contract too, because you won the Aries belt, you defend the Aries belt. Did you kind of assume something this big was coming, or was this a surprise at this stage of your career?
To be honest, yes, because Mick Maynor was there on my first fight for the belt with Alexander Takana, and he saw the fight. I think he enjoyed it, and but I was signed to RS, and I had one more fight on the contract. But after this fight, I managed to win. She was a pound for pound best fighter on Europe, and I expect that they're gonna call. Maybe not so soon, but yeah.
Well, they must have had you circled on their chart. So, with that being said, was the UFC always your goal? Was it always your dream to, like fight on the European regional scene until you got that call? Was the UFC the big plan?
Yeah. UFC was always on my mind, and I knew I'm gonna come to UFC. Didn't know when, because I just started like amateur in 2018. My first professional was when I was 26 years old. So I'm just like 2 years professional, and I was just fighting. I was just taking all the fights, and you see, after some time, hard work pays off.
And that's a good point. You kind of started a little bit later in the sport than a lot of fighters do, right? Some fighters nowadays starting at 15, 16 years old, things like that. What got you moving into MMA at that age?
So I was training kickboxing. I started when I was 17 years old. Before that, I trained handball. My father introduced me to handball, but I was never so interested. I wanted to impress them, but I didn't like handball so much. Like I I wanted to go in martial arts. And then I decided to stop with handball and start with kickboxing. I was doing kickboxing for 2 years, and then I started with jiu-jitsu. After jiu-jitsu, I started Muay Thai. So I had a lot of fights in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and kickboxing. But in the end, I wanted to come to MMA, but I also wanted to have some background so I can be good in MMA too. So yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense, but it obviously brings up a bigger question for me because you're saying you started with kickboxing, but watching any of your fights, you're mauling women on the ground, right? Like you're absolutely taking them down, beating the hell out of them, submitting them, all that kind of stuff. Was it just that jujitsu and wrestling came natural to you, or what is there something about the ground game that particularly clicked?
Yeah, I think so. That's something that is natural in me because when I started with jiu-jitsu, I was really bad with techniques, and coach are trying to show me all that things, and he was like, "Oh my God, uh, you don't have talent for this sport." But after I started to sparring, I was beating the people that are better than me. I don't know how, but I have that naturally in my body. Even now, I'm struggling to learn some techniques, but that technique is natural in me, and I'm developing, and every time I'm better and better on the ground. So yeah, that's probably something I'm born with.
I love it. I love it. Now, you mentioned you beat the number one in the world in the Europe rather in your weight class. I want to ask about fighting in Europe too, because this is going to be your first time, if I'm not mistaken, fighting outside of Europe. What is it like for you knowing, you're going to travel halfway across the world for this fight for the very first time?
To be honest, it's cool. It's Las Vegas. I never were in Las Vegas, so I'm looking forward to see Las Vegas. And then, yeah, I'm looking forward to see how my body is going to be after I start retraining there. I know it's probably a little bit harder in the start when you have jet lag, but I have my mental coach, my conditioning coach that's helping me, that have some things I'm going to do to be even better and to get over that jet lag even faster. So yeah, just looking forward to it, and that's it.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fight because, like I said, you got the call straight to the UFC. Clearly, they were interested. Like you said, Mick Maynard watching your fights prior, and they start you off with kind of a tall task. Not a lot of people in their debut are getting a 6-fight UFC veteran, especially, you got 6 professional fights yourself, but she's got 6 in the UFC. What were your thoughts when they offered you somebody who's sort of been there for a while in Luana Carolina?
I think it's a good matchup. She had a few fights in UFC, but I think she is exactly the fighter I need to fight right now, and that's going to be a good test for me. And really looking forward to show everyone what I'm capable of, even with one fighter that is long in UFC or from 2018 or something when I start my amateur career.
Yeah, and like you said, so she's the type of fighter you feel like you need to test yourself against. Is that experience wise? Do you feel like she has some particular skill set that you need to test yourself against? What about Luana Carolina is the right fit for you right now?
Experience and striking. She's a striker, so I think she wants to strike me, and I want to show her that I can strike with her. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So you see yourself in this fight showing off a little bit more of your striking, of standing with her and showing everybody what you're made of, both on the feet and on the mat.
Yeah, maybe if I don't get bored, and then
I like that. Wow. So I usually like to wrap these things up with a prediction. So give me a prediction. How does this one end come July 1st?
Okay, my teammates are sure that I'm going to finish with submission in the second round. So
You, you
I'm
want
going.
you want to get fancy and tell me what kind or
Um, if I'm going to be me, rear naked choke, but maybe something more spectacular for the audience.
I love it. Well, once again, fans, this has been Ivana Petrović, who fights Luana Carolina at UFC Vegas 76. That fight, July 1st. Ivana, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it too. Thank you.